The withered wife. What happens when a husband's cruel words push his wife to the limit? Can a public insult become the spark that reignites a woman's true spirit? If you're ready to witness a shocking transformation and a bold recovery of dignity, then hit the like button now. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss any other inspiring stories. And tell us in the comments where you are watching from. We love to know how far these stories travel. The breaking point came the previous night. Arthur Bennett walked into the Chicago apartment with his usual cold and distant expression, as if he carried the weight of the whole city on his shoulders. Or at least, that's what he wanted others to believe. Eleanor Vance, who was in the kitchen finishing dinner, heard the door slam and instantly knew something was wrong. In recent years, she had learned to read the signs, the sharp tone of his voice, the heavy sound of his footsteps, and worst of all, the suffocating silence that always preceded his fury. "Eleanor!" he yelled from the living room, without even bothering to greet or ask about the children, Leo and Chloe, who were playing in their room. "Did you see this month's card statement? You call this being careful with money?" Her heart raced, and anxiety flooded her. No matter how she answered, she knew he would use it against her. With a kitchen towel still in her hand, she cautiously walked into the living room, where Arthur held the statement with a look of pure contempt. "I bought some clothes for the children and some essentials for the apartment," she said, trying to maintain her composure. Arthur let out a burst of laughter, but it wasn't amusement. It was loaded with sarcasm and cruelty. "Essentials? You call that essentials? You waste my money on garbage and act like it's justified." He took a step forward, throwing the paper at her face. "Look at this. A cosmetics store? Do you really think a face cream is going to fix what time has done to you?" Eleanor felt as if she had been physically assaulted. His words were brutal, cutting through her without pity. She tried to respond, but her voice was only a whisper. "I just wanted to take care of myself a little." "Take care of yourself?" he scoffed. "Eleanor, look at you. Do you really believe that makeup and clothes will hide what you've become? After 2 children, you are no longer the woman I used to be proud of. Now, when I look at you, all I see is someone withered." He turned, tossing the paper onto the table. "That's why I'm taking Jenna to the company event on Saturday. At least she knows how to present herself properly in public." Eleanor stood there, frozen. Had he really said that? His young assistant? The words repeated in her head as she tried to process the pain. "Jenna," she murmured, her eyes filling with tears. "You can't be serious." Arthur, impassive, merely shrugged as if it were of no importance. He poured himself a whiskey and continued. "Eleanor, listen carefully to what I'm about to tell you." Pause for reflection. Have you ever felt so underestimated that you almost believed it? Leave us a comment and share your experience. The fire within. "Enough! You cannot. That man to keep destroying you. You are not a piece of furniture in his house, nor a decoration he has grown tired of. You are an extraordinary woman. Are you listening to me? Extraordinary. And you need to start believing it." Hannah's voice, her friend, cut in as Eleanor finished recounting the night's events, holding her breath. "Hannah, it's not that simple," Eleanor replied, the weight of her friend's words pressing on her. Although deep down she knew Hannah was right, trying to stand up after years of being knocked down felt like moving mountains. Her heart ached with a familiar heaviness, a kind of silent despair she had become too comfortable with over the years. Every time she thought about breaking free, fear entangled her determination like creeping vines. What would life be like without Arthur? Without the routines, however painful, that gave her world some kind of structure? "No, it's not simple," Hannah admitted. "But it's not impossible either. Think about yourself. Think about your children. What are you showing them if you let someone treat you like this? Eleanor, You are not the shadow Arthur wants you to believe you are. He tried to extinguish your light, but it is still there. You just need to let it shine." Her words touched her deeply. Eleanor sat in silence, staring at the kitchen table, lost in thought. She remembered the beginning of her marriage, when she was full of ambition and confidence. She remembered how she had given up her job as a graphic designer to care for her family, believing it was the best decision for everyone. But over time, Arthur stripped her world of joy, replacing it with duty, criticism, and silence. He made sure she never forgot that she wasn't enough. She recalled the countless nights she had cried silently in the bathroom, wiping her tears with a towel so the children wouldn't hear her. The way Arthur's words clung to her, words that told her she was withered, that she had become invisible, echoed loudest in moments of stillness. And now, at this table, something inside her flickered, a small whisper, barely audible, yet persistent. "Maybe you deserve more." "Eleanor, are you still there?" Hannah asked gently. "I'm here," she replied, her voice calm. Calm but firm. "Good, because this is what we're going to do. I want you to stand up, look in the mirror, and say to yourself, 'I deserve more than this.' Then I want you to think about what makes you happy, what you need." And this Saturday, when Arthur takes that girl to the event he uninvited you from, I want you to show him that he cannot erase you, that you are still that beautiful, strong, confident woman, understood? Eleanor remained silent for a moment. Something in Hannah's voice lit a small spark within her, a spark that began to burn away the fog of doubt. She imagined herself standing up, not just in front of a mirror, but in her own skin. Could she still be that woman? Could she believe in herself again? For the first time in a long time, the idea did not seem impossible. It felt necessary. "I'll try," she whispered, still insecure. "No," Hannah said firmly. "You won't try. You will do. And when you do, you will see that Arthur has no power over you. You choose who you are, not him." Eleanor ended the call feeling slightly lighter, although her chest still ached. But Hannah's words had sown something inside her, a seed of strength. You choose who you are, not him. The phrase repeated in her mind as she cleared the dinner plates. That night, after tucking the children into bed, Eleanor sat down in front of the computer, opened a browser, and began to search. Hair salons, makeup tutorials, style guides. She felt nervous, but also a little excited. Each click was a small act of rebellion, a small brick in a new foundation. In the next room, Arthur was snoring, oblivious to the change beginning inside his wife. Eleanor closed her laptop with a slight smile on her lips. There was still fear, but for the first time in years, there was something more powerful: determination. Pause for reflection. What do you think Eleanor will do next? Share your predictions in the comments. If you're enjoying the story, don't forget to give the video a big like. The grand entrance. Today he's going to finance his own downfall. Eleanor could still hear Arthur's voice from the previous night. Look at this cosmetics store. Do you really think a cream is going to fix what time has done to you? The fury rose in her chest like fire. If he truly believed she wasn't enough, then she would show him how wrong he was. And if his world revolved around money, status, and image, then his precious credit card was about to become the weapon for his own lesson. With an ironic smile, Eleanor stood up, grabbed her purse, and walked out the door. The magnificent Mile shopping center in Chicago was buzzing with morning energy. Eleanor walked in with determination, focused on one goal: reinvention. Her first stop, high-end fashion. She moved through the boutique aisle with a racing heart, not with anxiety, but with a thrilling mixture of defiance and intent. She was no longer the quiet, modest wife who carefully watched her spending for fear of Arthur's judgment. No, today she was something completely different. Her steps resonated with purpose. Each step was a silent rebellion. The polished shop windows reflected a woman who, for the first time in years, was entering a space not to disappear, but to be seen. The scent of new leather, expensive perfumes, and polished wood infused the air with possibilities. This was her battlefield, and she had arrived armed with courage and Arthur's platinum card. She entered one of the most exclusive designer boutiques and was greeted by a perfectly dressed young saleswoman who offered a polite smile. "Good morning, ma'am. How may I help you?" the saleswoman asked. Eleanor inhaled deeply, raising her chin, exhibiting a confidence she hadn't felt in years. "I need a complete wardrobe," she said. "Dresses, pants, blouses, everything. And I want every piece to command attention." The saleswoman blinked in surprise, but quickly regained her composure. "Right this way. We've just received a new collection that might be exactly what you're looking for." For the next 2 hours, Eleanor tried on elegant dresses that hugged her figure, silk blouses that accentuated her complexion, and tailored pants that fit her perfectly. With each glance in the mirror, she saw a part of herself returning, a version long buried under Arthur's constant disapproval. Each fitting felt like therapy. As zippers went up and fabric slid over her skin, she wasn't just dressing a body. She was reviving a soul. "This red dress," the saleswoman said, adjusting the garment sculpted around Eleanor's waist, "looks like it was designed just for you." Eleanor turned to the mirror. The material embraced her like a second skin, and the vibrant red radiated strength and energy. She smiled, genuinely satisfied. "I'll take this one, and the black, the emerald green, and the heels to match each." She left the boutique with her arms full of luxurious shopping bags and a feeling she hadn't experienced in years, pride in herself. But she wasn't finished yet. She wouldn't overlook a single detail. Her next destination was a designer shoe store. She moved through the aisles with determination, selecting refined and audacious heels. Each pair felt like a statement. I can stand on my own. I can walk with purpose. She chose black patent leather stilettos, red velvet pumps, and classic heels that would match anything. The saleswoman, clearly impressed, smiled as she rang up the purchase. "You have excellent taste, ma'am. These shoes are simply stunning." Eleanor offered a quiet, secure smile. "Thank you. I deserve them." Her voice didn't tremble, not even a little. The simple phrase wasn't uttered with arrogance. It carried years of unspoken pain, silent resilience, and a quiet reclamation of power. For so long, she had denied herself even the smallest indulgences. Each pair of shoes felt like a piece of armor, shielding her against years of doubt and emotional erosion. With even more shopping bags in hand, she headed to the final piece of her transformation. The hair salon she walked into was one of the most exclusive in Chicago. Eleanor had heard rumors about it before, but had never dared to cross its doors. Now, she pushed them open without hesitation. She was greeted by a stylist with a short, vibrant hairstyle who welcomed her warmly. "Welcome, ma'am. What can we do for you today?" the stylist asked. Eleanor sat down in front of a full-length mirror and inhaled deeply before answering. "I want a complete transformation. I don't want anyone to recognize me when I leave here. I want to be new." The stylist smiled, clearly energized by the challenge. "Then you've come to the right place. Leave everything to us." For hours, Eleanor surrendered to the process. First, they treated her hair with a deep conditioning. Then came the shears, cutting with precision, shaping an elegant and contemporary bob that framed her face perfectly. Once done, a warm-toned color was applied, giving her hair a vibrant, luminous finish. Next, she sat with a makeup artist who skillfully worked, lining her eyes with intense shades that deepened her gaze and blending earthy shadows that made them sparkle. Her lips were painted a bold, luxurious red. Confidence and power in a single stroke. Every brushstroke felt like a healing touch. As the colors bloomed on her face, Eleanor felt something unlock within her, a version of herself she thought she had lost forever. When Eleanor looked in the mirror, she barely recognized the woman staring back. It felt like a rebirth. Her hands trembled slightly as she ran her fingers through her new hair. "What do you think?" the stylist asked. Eleanor smiled, and this time, it wasn't a hesitant or timid smile. It was the smile of someone who knew her worth. "I love it. It's perfect." At the counter, the receptionist handed her the total with a cheerful smile. Eleanor presented Arthur's credit card without flinching. Let him pay for the damage he did, she thought. That afternoon, Eleanor returned home with her arms full of shopping bags. Her children ran to her with laughter and open arms, but Arthur wasn't there. He was still at the office, probably preparing for the weekend event, enjoying his time with Jenna. Eleanor placed the bags in her room and looked at herself in the mirror. For the first time in years, she didn't see someone broken. She saw a strong, stunning woman reclaiming her identity. Pause for reflection. How do you think Arthur will react when he sees the credit card statement? And what do you think of Eleanor's plan? Leave a comment with your city or country. We love to see how far these stories travel. The ultimate confrontation Saturday finally arrived, bringing with it Arthur's much-anticipated company gala. Eleanor orchestrated every piece of this day like a general planning a decisive battle. Because deep down, that's exactly how she felt, like she was fighting a war. It wasn't just a glamorous night. It was her opportunity to show Arthur and herself that she wasn't the defeated woman he had described with his cruel words. She was something much bigger. At home, the atmosphere was tense. Arthur spent the entire morning immersed in calls and texts with his assistant Jenna, finalizing every detail for the evening. He left early to pick her up, without even acknowledging Eleanor or the children. She watched him walk out the door with his usual air of smug self-satisfaction, completely unaware of what was coming. "See you later, Eleanor," he said casually, adjusting his tie in the entrance mirror. "And don't wait up for my call. I'll be busy all night." Standing by the sink, pretending to be absorbed in the dishes, she barely turned her head. But internally, an ironic smile crossed her lips. "You don't need to call me, Arthur," she thought. "We'll see each other very soon, and you won't be ready." As soon as Arthur left, Eleanor sprang into action. She took Leo and Chloe to Hannah's house, who had enthusiastically volunteered to look after them. "Ready for the grand reveal?" Hannah asked with a playful smile, taking the children's backpacks. Eleanor nodded, her chest fluttering with a mix of nervousness and anticipation. "More than ready," she replied with quiet determination, although a slight gleam in her eyes hinted at her inner vulnerability. "Remember what I told you," Hannah reminded her. "Tonight isn't just about him. It's about you. You are walking into the version of yourself you were always meant to be." Eleanor hugged her friend tightly. After saying goodbye to the children, she returned to the salon for the final preparations. This was her moment of complete transformation. The salon staff treated her like royalty. As soon as she took off her coat, they surrounded her, working in harmony to perfect every detail. Her hair, now styled in soft, luminous waves, fell gracefully. Her makeup, retouched for the occasion, intensified her eyes and gave her the look of a woman who knew exactly who she was. Finally, it was time to slip into the red dress she had selected days before. It hugged her figure precisely, with a slit on the thigh that added just the right touch of daring. She paired it with the black, patent leather stilettos she had bought. Elegant, imposing. Eleanor looked like she had stepped right out of a fashion magazine. Standing in front of the full-length mirror, she barely recognized herself. For the first time in years, she saw the woman Arthur had tried to erase. A vibrant, radiant woman, full of life and undeniably stunning. "Miss Eleanor, you look absolutely breathtaking," one of the stylists said, looking at her with admiration. Eleanor smiled, and this time it wasn't a hesitant or shy expression. It was the smile of a woman who knew her worth. "I love it. It's perfect." The grand event was held in a luxurious hotel ballroom in downtown Chicago. The ballroom lights shone like stars, casting a warm glow over the elegant decor. Soft orchestral music flowed through the air, adding a refined ambiance. Guests, executives, partners, high-level employees, and their dates walked the red carpet in evening gowns and tuxedos, ready for a night of prestige. Arthur had already arrived, arm in arm with Jenna, who wore a tight, short dress that attracted a lot of attention. Some of Arthur's colleagues exchanged discreet glances, clearly uncomfortable with his choice of date. But Arthur, as usual, was too absorbed in himself to notice. "Arthur, how is Eleanor?" asked Mr. Sterling, a senior partner, clapping him on the back. Arthur stiffened slightly, but maintained a casual tone. "Oh, she decided to stay home. These kinds of events aren't really her scene." He laughed, but there was a flicker of discomfort in his eyes. He quickly changed the conversation to avoid more questions. What Arthur didn't know was that Eleanor was already on her way. When her car stopped in front of the hotel, Eleanor took a deep breath before stepping out. The driver opened the door, and as she emerged, the slit of her red dress gave a glimpse of her legs with every stride. Every movement toward the entrance made heads turn. "Who is she?" whispered one of the employees, helping guests with their coats. "I have no idea," another replied, "but she looks like she stepped out of a movie." The whispers spread as Eleanor glided through the hotel lobby, her chin held high, her eyes forward, completely impassive to the stares. When she reached the grand ballroom, conversation silenced. All eyes turned to her, captivated. There was something in her presence, the way she moved, the power of her posture, that demanded attention. Arthur was standing with his back to the entrance, laughing at something Jenna had said. When he noticed the sudden silence in the room, he frowned and slowly turned around, only to stand motionless. In the doorway stood Eleanor, looking like she owned the place. His eyes widened, and his mouth fell open in shock. Was that her? For a moment, he couldn't believe what he was seeing. Eleanor looked more stunning than he remembered. It wasn't just her appearance, it was her composure, her confidence, the unmistakable sense of independence that radiated from her. This was not the woman he had belittled for years. She was transformed. Beside him, Jenna shifted uncomfortably. The attention she had enjoyed just moments before had vanished. Now every gaze, every whisper, every gasp of awe in the ballroom was directed at Eleanor. "What the hell?" Arthur muttered under his breath. Eleanor, completely serene, walked further into the ballroom, ignoring him entirely. Mr. Sterling, one of the company's senior partners, approached her with a warm, charismatic smile. "Good evening, ma'am. Have we met before?" he asked, clearly impressed by her elegance. Eleanor replied with calm confidence, extending her hand. "I'm Eleanor, Arthur's wife." Mr. Sterling's expression changed from surprise to genuine admiration. "Well, Arthur has certainly been hiding a treasure. Please, let me escort you to the head table. You deserve to be the center of attention tonight." Eleanor accepted the invitation with a grace that left Arthur frozen in his seat. As she walked beside Mr. Sterling toward the table reserved for the company's elite, the entire ballroom remained focused on her. The atmosphere was electric with tension, and Arthur could feel his control over his image, his authority, slipping away with every step she took. Now she was sitting among the company's most powerful figures, at the center of the night's attention. Arthur, still immobilized in his seat, could only watch the public unraveling of everything he thought he controlled. The woman he had scorned, belittled, and pushed away for years was now the one dominating the room. The whispers of admiration buzzed through the space, and every admiring glance directed at Eleanor seemed like a dagger digging deeper into Arthur's pride. Jenna, who had been enjoying the attention moments earlier, now fidgeted next to Arthur. Her outfit, once bold and showy, now looked garish and inappropriate next to Eleanor's natural sophistication. She leaned closer to Arthur, trying to pull his gaze back. "Arthur," she whispered, trying to smile. "What just happened? Why didn't you tell me she was coming?" He turned to her slowly, his eyes dark with contained fury. "Didn't you know?" he snapped between clenched teeth. The bitterness in his voice was unmistakable. Jenna forced a smile, trying to minimize the damage. "Well, don't worry, no one really cares." "Shut up, Jenna," he cut her off sharply. "You have no idea what you're talking about." The acidity of his voice startled her, making her shrink in her seat, hurt and embarrassed. Arthur's eyes drifted back to the head table, to Eleanor. She hadn't even looked at him, yet she was dismantling the image he had worked so hard to create. She didn't need him to shine, and that reality crushed him. Unable to bear it any longer, Arthur abruptly rose from his seat, ignoring Jenna's desperate look. "Where are you going?" she whispered, but he didn't answer. He walked toward the main table, his face hardened by rage. Around him, the volume of murmurs increased. All the guests turned their eyes to the unfolding scene, waiting for the confrontation to begin. "Excuse me," Arthur said with a cold, cutting tone, interrupting the conversation Eleanor was having with Mr. Sterling and the others at the table. He leaned in closer, lowering his voice, but loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. "Can we talk in private?" Eleanor slowly lifted her gaze, meeting his eyes. There was no fear there, no submission, just a calm that immediately unsettled him. "Of course not, Arthur," she replied, her tone serene as she took a sip of her wine. "If you have something to say, say it. I have nothing to hide." Her words took his breath away. He expected her to stand up, to follow him without hesitation, as she always did, but instead, she held firm in front of everyone. "I don't think this is the place for that," he murmured, his voice sharper now, trying to maintain control. Eleanor gently placed her glass on the table and crossed her hands in her lap. Then she looked him directly in the eyes, without blinking. "This? Are you referring to the fact that I'm not sitting at home while you show off tonight? Or are you referring to the fact that I'm demonstrating that I'm not the withered version of myself that you created to feel superior?" Mr. Sterling, sitting next to her, raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued. The rest of the table feigned interest in their drinks, but the attention was undeniable. Everyone was listening. Arthur clenched his fists, leaning in closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Eleanor, don't make a scene. This is not a game." She smiled, but now there was steel behind the smile. "A scene? A game?" she retorted, her voice calm but firm. "Arthur, do you think all the years of your contempt, your criticism, your humiliation were a game?" She paused deliberately, letting the silence fill with weight. "This is not a scene, Arthur. It is a reminder, so you never forget who I really am." Arthur felt unstable, as if the ground beneath his feet had moved. For years, he had made the decisions, decided what mattered, who mattered. But now, Eleanor stood before him with something he thought he had buried forever: her dignity. The silence around the table was dense. Mr. Sterling, who had been silently observing, finally spoke. "Eleanor, I must say you have impressed us tonight. It's rare to find someone with such presence and grace. I hope we see you more at future events." Eleanor thanked him with a soft, genuine smile. Arthur, meanwhile, turned to Mr. Sterling with a look torn between envy and disbelief. He could feel his control slipping away. "Well," Eleanor said, her tone smooth and serene, "perhaps in the future, I will be a regular guest." She knew perfectly well the blow that phrase dealt to Arthur's pride. The silent laughter around the table felt like a slap in Arthur's face. There was no escape from the humiliation now. Eleanor met his gaze with an unwavering calm, and that unnerved him. "Don't worry, Arthur," she said softly. "If you need a moment to compose yourself, I can wait. I'm in no hurry." Arthur clenched his jaw. There was nothing he could say to make things worse. Eleanor had won this round, and she had done it publicly. As she resumed her conversation with Mr. Sterling and the others, Arthur turned and walked away, his shoulders rigid and his expression hardened. The night he had meticulously planned had become a disaster. He returned to his table like a defeated man, each step heavier than the last. He could feel the eyes following him, some surprised, others disdainful, but all of them witnesses to the moment his carefully constructed image crumbled. Eleanor had flipped the narrative, and he had no idea how to get it back. When he reached his table, Jenna greeted him with an uneasy look, fully aware that the energy in the room had changed. Her flirtatious confidence had vanished, replaced by an uncomfortable insecurity. She tried to resume the conversation. "Arthur," she said, leaning closer, "what just happened? Why didn't you tell me she was coming?" He turned to her slowly, his eyes dark with contained fury. "Didn't you know?" he replied between clenched teeth. The bitterness in his voice was unmistakable. Jenna forced a smile, trying to minimize the damage. "Well, don't worry. No one really cares." "Shut up, Jenna," he snapped, cutting her off abruptly. "You don't have the slightest idea what you're talking about." The acidity of his voice startled her, making her shrink in her seat, hurt and embarrassed. Arthur's eyes shifted back to the head table, to Eleanor. She didn't even glance at him, yet she was dismantling the image he had worked so hard to create. She didn't need him to shine, and that reality tore him apart. Meanwhile, Eleanor savored every second of her victory. Every exchange with Mr. Sterling and the other partners affirmed everything Arthur had tried to strip from her: her self-esteem, her confidence, her voice. For years, he had convinced her that she wasn't enough, that her place was in the shadows while he enjoyed the attention. But tonight, the entire ballroom saw her for who she truly was: a woman of strength, elegance, and undeniable presence. "Eleanor," Mr. Sterling asked, leaning in with genuine curiosity, "have you ever considered corporate interior design projects?" Eleanor turned to him with interest. "Well, I used to work as an interior designer," she said, "but I gave it up after getting married." Although she spoke the words calmly, a small knot twisted in her stomach. Saying it out loud, acknowledging the sacrifice she had made for Arthur, still hurt. It wasn't just the loss of a job, it was the loss of her identity, the vibrant woman who once saw beauty in every space and color palette, the woman who used to dream in inspiration boards and design plans. She had buried that version of herself silently, bit by bit, until she barely remembered what it felt like to create something for herself. Mr. Sterling nodded thoughtfully. "What a shame. From what I've seen tonight, I can tell you have a keen eye for detail. If you ever think about returning to the field, I think you would be very successful. In fact, my company is preparing to renovate some of our offices." He let the offer hang in the air. The implication was unmistakable. Eleanor smiled. A spark of emotion ignited in her chest, a mix of hope and fear. Hope that she could revive a long-buried part of herself. Fear of believing too soon that life could offer her more. But above all, it was a possibility, and it felt electric. "Thank you, Mr. Sterling. I will seriously consider it." Her voice was sincere, and her smile was warm. Mr. Sterling looked genuinely pleased with her answer, and their conversation flowed naturally, completely ignoring Arthur's furious glare from across the ballroom. As the night wore on, Arthur noticed something far worse than the admiration for Eleanor. People had started whispering about him. He couldn't catch all the words, but he didn't need to. The looks of disapproval said it all. The murmurs contained the same unspoken question. How could a man like him treat a woman like her that way? Every glance felt like a sting that tore at the fragile image he had built for years. It was no longer just about losing control over Eleanor. It was about losing the respect of his peers. His reputation, the mask he wore with such confidence, was cracking. A thin layer of sweat started to form on his forehead. Never before had Arthur felt his reputation threatened. He had always been the winner, the respected one, the one in control. But now he was just the man who had been overshadowed by the very woman he had tried to belittle. He couldn't take it anymore. He abruptly stood up, ignoring Jenna, who watched him with silent despair. "Where are you going?" she whispered, but he didn't answer. He walked directly to the head table, where Eleanor was sitting, still the center of the night's attention. "You seem to be enjoying yourself, Eleanor," he said with bitterness, his voice strained. Eleanor looked up with serenity, as if she had expected the interruption. "I am, Arthur. Thank you for asking." Her voice was smooth, almost playful, and it hit him hard. "Can we talk now?" he insisted, his irritation rising with her calm. Before Eleanor could reply, Mr. Sterling intervened. "Arthur, with all due respect, Eleanor seems to be enjoying the evening. Perhaps you could wait for her to finish." "This has nothing to do with you, Sterling," Arthur snapped, but Mr. Sterling didn't move. Before the tension could escalate, Eleanor intervened. "It's all right, Mr. Sterling." She stood up gracefully, wine glass in hand. Her composure did not waver. "If Arthur wants to talk, I'm willing to listen." Arthur let out a sharp sigh, relieved to finally have her attention. But before he could move to another room, Eleanor added, "Right here is fine. There's nothing Arthur has to say that can't be said in front of everyone." Her tone was firm. Her eyes dared him to continue. If Arthur wanted a confrontation, she would give him one, but on her own terms. The people at the table shifted uncomfortably. No one wanted to interfere, but no one looked away either. Everyone was visibly interested in what was about to happen. Arthur, cornered by his own ego, had no choice but to accept the condition. "You really want to do this here?" he asked through clenched teeth, trying to pressure her to back down. Eleanor returned his gaze with a cold, unwavering smile. "You were the one who insisted on talking, Arthur. I'm listening." "Go ahead." Arthur looked around. The weight of every gaze in the ballroom settled on his shoulders. There was no escape now. "Well," his voice was strained, "what the hell are you trying to prove, Eleanor? Why do you come like this, just to ruin my night? Is this some childish revenge?" Eleanor took a casual sip of her wine, her expression undisturbed. "Ruin your night?" "No, Arthur. I didn't come here for you. I came for me, because I'm done hiding. I'm done being invisible. Tonight I wanted to remind you, and remind myself, exactly who I am." Arthur clenched his fists in fury. He was losing the upper hand, and he knew it. "You think this makes you look good?" he snapped, his voice rising. "You think walking in here like you own the place makes you some kind of queen? Eleanor, you're being ridiculous." A heavy silence followed. His words landed like a slap. But Eleanor was unshaken. "Ridiculous?" she repeated softly. "Is that what you think, Arthur? It doesn't surprise me. You were always good at putting me down, weren't you? For years you ridiculed me. You belittled me. You made me feel like I was never enough. But not tonight. Tonight, Arthur, you no longer control me." Her words rippled through the room like thunder. Conversation stopped. Heads turned. Arthur was speechless for the first time, his mouth slightly open, searching for a comeback and finding none. Eleanor had stripped him of every illusion, every layer of control, and he had no defense left. Finally, Eleanor took a last sip of her wine and gently set the glass down on the table. She looked at Arthur with a serene smile. "Thank you for inviting me tonight, Arthur. It was quite enlightening." With that, she turned and returned to her seat, leaving Arthur motionless, humiliated, defeated, and exposed. While Eleanor resumed her conversation with Mr. Sterling and the others, Arthur remained there for another moment, his pride shattered, before turning in silence and leaving the ballroom. He didn't say a word. He didn't look back and left Jenna sitting alone at their table, uncomfortable, confused, and abandoned. That night, as the music played and laughter filled the room, Eleanor knew she had recovered something Arthur had tried to break for years: her dignity, her voice, and, most importantly, her freedom. Pause for reflection. What do you think of Eleanor's confrontation? Do you think Arthur will learn his lesson? Tell us your opinion in the comments and share this video to inspire more people. The path to freedom. Eleanor woke up the next morning in the guest room of Hannah's house. Sunlight filtered through the soft curtains, and the distant sound of her children playing in the living room brought a soft smile to her face. She had slept peacefully, without tension, without fear, without Arthur. For the first time in years, she felt light, as if a heavy burden had been lifted from her shoulders. Sitting on the bed, Eleanor closed her eyes briefly, reliving the moments of the previous night, her powerful entrance, Arthur's stunned reaction, and the words she had spoken without trembling. She had never imagined herself capable of confronting him so publicly, but she had done it, and she had prevailed. Now, with a clear mind, Eleanor knew this was not just a personal victory. It was a turning point, the beginning of something much more permanent. She got up, washed her face, and looked in the mirror. What she saw reflected was not the same woman from months ago. Her hair, still styled from the night before, framed a face full of purpose. The old uncertainty in her eyes had disappeared, replaced by determination. There was fire now. There was strength. There was a woman who finally knew her worth. In the kitchen, Hannah was waiting for her with a hot cup of coffee and her usual kind smile. "Well, how does last night's star feel this morning?" Hannah asked, sliding a cup over. Eleanor sat at the table and wrapped her hands around the cup, savoring the warmth. "I feel free," she said with a quiet, secure smile. "And ready." Hannah raised an eyebrow. "Ready for what?" Eleanor took a sip. Then she looked her friend straight in the eyes. "Ready to end this. I'm filing for divorce." Hannah gently set down her cup, surprised. "Are you sure? More than ever?" Eleanor replied, without missing a beat. "Last night wasn't just about confronting him. It was about ending this, forever. Arthur has been demeaning me for years. He treated me as if I were disposable, something he could control, then throw away when it suited him. But that ends now. I am no longer that woman." Hannah looked at her in silence for a long moment, letting the words sink in. Then a proud smile slowly spread across her face. "That's the Eleanor I always knew was there." Eleanor reached across the table and gently squeezed her friend's hand. "Thank you for everything, Hannah. For taking care of me, for taking care of the children, for reminding me who I really am. I couldn't have done this without you." Her voice trembled slightly, not from weakness, but from the overwhelming gratitude that washed over her. This was the first time in a long time she felt truly seen. "Don't give me the credit," Hannah said with a warm, firm tone. "I only gave you the tools, all the courage, all the strength, all the determination that was always inside you. You had just forgotten for a while." Later that day, Eleanor returned to her house with the children. As she drove, Her mind was serene. She knew that what was coming would not be easy, that Arthur would resist. But she also knew she was ready. The silence inside the car was not heavy. It was peaceful. And every glance at her children in the rearview mirror reminded her of why she had to stay strong. When they arrived, the children happily ran to their rooms, laughing and playing, while Eleanor walked into the living room. Arthur was there, sitting on the sofa, clutching his phone. His brow was furrowed, and he looked exhausted, clearly still affected by the previous night. He looked up when she walked in. "So you finally decided to come home," he said with sarcasm, putting his phone down on the table. "Did you have fun playing the runaway wife at your friend's house while I cleaned up your little spectacle?" Eleanor met his tone with quiet indifference. "Arthur, we need to talk." He blinked, surprised by her composure. "Talk about what?" She sat down across from him, her posture erect, her voice unbroken. "I'm filing for divorce. This is over." The words hit him like a punch. Arthur stared at her as if he didn't understand. "What did you just say?" "You heard me," Eleanor replied. "I want a divorce. This is done." He let out a dry, bitter laugh. "You've lost your mind, Eleanor. After everything I've given you, after all these years, are you really going to throw everything away?" "I'm not throwing anything away," she said. "You threw it away, Arthur, when you chose to demean me, when you put your pride and image above your family. You ended this a long time ago. I'm just making it official." Arthur stood up, pacing the room like a caged animal. "You're overreacting. What happened last night was just a misunderstanding. I was angry, that's all. You know I didn't mean any of it." His voice broke with desperation, but his eyes betrayed him. He knew his excuses were weak, and worse, ineffective. He stumbled over his words, trying to find something that would work. Eleanor held up a hand to silence him. "No, don't give me excuses. I'm not here for that. I'm here to tell you that this will be settled, but no longer on your terms. We'll speak in court." Arthur's expression hardened. "What are you saying?" "I know my rights," she said clearly. "I'm entitled to half of everything. The house, the savings, everything. You can fight, but I won't back down. I will no longer be your doormat. I'm done letting you humiliate me." Arthur clenched his fists. His jaw tightened as he struggled to contain his fury. "Oh, so now you're a legal expert too, Eleanor?" Arthur scoffed bitterly. "Where did this version of you come from?" Eleanor slowly stood up, looking him in the eyes. "It came from the pain you caused me. It came from the nights I cried myself to sleep because of your words. It came from the years I spent believing I wasn't enough." Her voice held steel, not bitterness. "And now, Arthur, that broken woman you left behind is standing up, and I promise you, she will never fall again." Every word landed like a hammer, measured, deliberate, and irrevocable. Arthur stared at her, trying to exert dominance, but it was futile. She was no longer the same woman. "This will be settled in court," Eleanor repeated calmly. "And I don't care how long it takes. I will make sure I get everything I am owed. And you will learn what it means to treat people like trash." The silence that followed was heavier than any shout. Arthur opened his mouth, but nothing came out. She had taken away his last weapon, intimidation. Without saying another word, Eleanor turned and walked toward their bedroom, closing the door behind her. She exhaled deeply. A mix of finality and liberation washed over her. She had reclaimed her power, and she would not lose it again. Arthur remained motionless on the sofa, stunned by everything she had said. His words echoed in his head. "You will no longer be my doormat. This will be settled legally." For the first time in his life, Arthur was truly lost. He had always made the decisions, always dictated the rules. But now the game had changed, and he was no longer in control. The legacy of self-worth, Through Eleanor's journey, there is something every woman must remember. Your worth is not determined by anyone else. Do not allow cruel words, humiliation, or criticism to extinguish your inner fire, because within you resides a strength that can lift you up, even in the darkest moments. Being a mother, a homemaker, or following any path you choose does not make you less. You are capable, valuable, and worthy of respect. No one has the right to make you feel small, not for your appearance, your choices, or your sacrifices. Love and self-esteem begin with you. Toxic relationships and emotional abuse, whether public or private, should never be normalized or tolerated. If someone tries to tear you down or make you feel unworthy, remember this: you do not need anyone to validate your power. You deserve respect, dignity, and love. And if someone tries to crush your spirit, know this: you can rise again, because the strength within you cannot be destroyed. You are not alone. Seek support. Know your rights. Surround yourself with people who uplift and appreciate you. Never settle for less than you deserve. Like Eleanor, you have the power to take back your life, rebuild your confidence, and rediscover the extraordinary woman you always were. You are powerful. You are valuable. You are enough. And if you are still here, watching or reading this very moment, then perhaps something in Eleanor's journey has touched your heart in a quiet, powerful way. If so, take a moment with me now. Let's look at this not just as a story, but as something we can take into our own lives. Eleanor's transformation wasn't just about red dresses or dramatic entrances. It was about rediscovering her self-worth. It was about walking through the fire and realizing she could survive without waiting for permission. The philosopher Epictetus once said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." Eleanor reclaimed her freedom not by fighting Arthur with anger, but by taking back her power with grace. How many times do we stay silent just to keep the peace? How many times do we convince ourselves that we are too broken, too late, too tired to start over? Eleanor's story reminds us that healing begins the moment we say, "Enough." Remember, healing is not loud. It is not always dramatic. Sometimes it is a quiet decision at your kitchen table, a whisper that says, "I am enough." Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Eleanor could not control Arthur's cruelty, but she could control how she responded, and in choosing not to let bitterness consume her, she found healing. If this story moved you, please like this video, share it with someone who might need encouragement today, and subscribe to our channel. There are more stories like this waiting for you, more reminders that even when life tries to extinguish your light, you remain the flame. Thank you for being here. You matter, and your story is not over yet. We'll see you next time.